Canto 13. Nessus had not yet reached the other shore when we moved on into a pathless wood that twisted upward from hell's broken floor. Its foliage was not verdant but nearly black. The unhealthy branches, gnarled and wrapped and warped and tangled, bore poisoned thorns instead of fruit. The track of those wild beasts that shun the open spaces, men till between Kekina and Cornetto runs through no rougher nor more tangled places. Here nests the odious harpies, of whom my master wrote how they drove Aeneas and his companions from the Strophades with prophecies of disaster. Their wings are wide, their feet clawed, their huge bellies covered with feathers, their necks and faces human. They croak eternally in the unnatural trees. Before going on, I would have you understand, my guide began. We are in the second round, and shall be till we reach the burning sand. Therefore look carefully, and you will see things in this wood which, if I told them to you, would shake the confidence you have placed in me. I heard cries of lamentation rise and spill on every hand, but saw no souls in pain. In all that waste and puzzled, I stood still. I think perhaps he thought that I was thinking those cries rose from among the twisted roots through which the spirits of the damned were slinking to hide from us. Therefore my master said, if you break off a twig, what you will learn will drive what you are thinking from your head. Puzzled, I raised my hand a bit and slowly broke off a branchlet from an enormous thorn, and the great trunk of it cried, why do you break me? And after blood had darkened all the bowel of the wound, it cried again, why do you tear me? Is there no pity left in any soul? Men we were, and now we are changed to sticks. Well might your hand have been more merciful, were we no more than souls of lice and ticks. As a green branch with one end all aflame will hiss and sputter sap out of the other as the air escapes, so from that trunk there came words and blood together, gout by gout. Startled, I dropped the branch that I was holding and stood transfixed by fear, half turned about to my master, who replied, O wounded soul, could he have believed before what he has seen in my verses only, you would yet be whole, for his hand would never have been raised against you, but knowing this truth could never be believed till it was seen, I urged him on to do what grieves me now. And I beg to know your name, that to make you some amends in the sweet world when he returns, he may refresh your fame. And the trunk, so sweet those words to me that I cannot be still, and may it not annoy you if I seem somewhat lengthy in reply. I am he who held both keys to Frederick's heart, locking, unlocking with so deft a touch that scarce another soul had any part in his most secret thoughts. Through every strife I was so faithful to my glorious office that for it I gave up both sleep and life. That harlot Envy, who on Caesar's face keeps fixed forever her adulterous stare, the common plague and vice of court and palace, inflamed all minds against me. These inflamed, so inflamed him that all my happy honors were changed to mourning. Then unjustly blamed, my soul in scorn, and thinking to be free of scorn and death, made me at last, though just, unjust to myself. By the new roots of this tree, I swear to you that never in word or spirit did I break faith to my Lord and Emperor, who was so worthy of honor in his merit. If either of you return to the world, speak for me, to vindicate in the memory of men one who lies prostrate from the blows of envy. The poet stood, then turned. Since he is silent, he said to me, do not you waste this hour if you wish to ask about his life or torment. And I replied, question him for my part on whatever you think I would do well to hear. I could not, such compassion chokes my heart. The poet began again, that this man may with all his heart do for you what your words entreat to him. Imprisoned spirit, I pray, tell us how the soul is bound and bent into these knots, and whether any ever frees itself from such imprisonment. At that the trunk blew powerfully, and then the wind became a voice that spoke these words. Briefly is the answer given, when out of the flesh from which it tore itself, the violent spirit comes to punishment. Minos assigns it to the seventh shelf. It falls into the wood, and landing there, wherever fortune flings it, it strikes root, and there it sprouts, lusty as any tear, shoots up a sapling and becomes a tree. The harpies, feeding on its leaves then, give it pain, and pain's outlet simultaneously. Like the rest, we shall go for our husks on judgment day, but not that we may wear them, for it is not just that a man be given what he throws away. Here shall we drag them in this mournful glade. Our bodies will dangle to the end of time, each on the thorns of its tormented shade. We waited by the trunk, but it said no more. In waiting, we were startled by a noise that grew through all the wood. Just such a roar and trembling as one feels when the boar and chase approach his stand. The beasts and branches crashing and clashing in the heat of the fierce race. And there on the left, running so violently, they broke off every twig in the dark wood. Two torn and naked wraiths went plunging by me. The leader cried, come now, O death, come now. And the other, seeing that he was outrun, cried out, your legs were not so ready, Lano, and the joust at the topo. And suddenly in his rush, perhaps because his breath was failing him, he hid himself inside a thorny bush and cowered among its leaves. Then at his back the wood leaped, with black bitches swift as greyhounds escaping from their leash, and all the pack sprang on him with their fangs. They opened him and tore him savagely, and then withdrew, carrying his body with them limb by limb. Then, taking me by the hand across the wood, my master led me toward the bush. Lamenting all its fractures, blew out words and blood. O Giacomo da Sant' Andrea, it said, what have you gained in making me your screen? What part had I in the foul life you led? And when my master had drawn up to it, he said, who were you? Who through all your wounds blow out your blood with your lament, a sad spirit? And he to us, you who have come to see how the outrageous mangling of these hounds has torn my boughs and stripped my leaves from me, oh, heap them round my ruin. I was born in the city that tore down Mars and raised the Baptist. On that account the god of war has sworn her sorrow shall not end. And were it not that something of his image still survives on the bridge across the Arno, some have thought those citizens who, of their love and pain afterwards, rebuilt it from the ashes left by Attila, would have worked in vain. I am one who has no tale to tell. I made myself a gibbet of my own lintel. Canto 14. Love of that land that was our common source moved me to tears. I gathered up the leaves and gave them back. He was already hoarse. We came to the edge of the forest where one goes from the second round to the third, and there we saw what fearful arts the hand of justice knows. to make these new things wholly clear. I say we came to a plain whose soil repels all roots. The wood of misery rings it the same way the wood itself ringed by the red fosse. We paused at its edge. The ground was burning sand, just such a waste as Cato marched across. O endless wrath of God, how utterly thou shouldst become a terror to all men who read the frightful truths revealed to me. Enormous herds of naked souls I saw, lamenting till their eyes were burned of tears. They seemed condemned by an unequal law, for some were stretched supine upon the ground, some squatted with their arms about themselves, and others without pause roamed round and round. Most numerous were those that roamed the plain, far fewer were the souls stretched on the sand, but moved to louder cries by greater pain. And over all that sand on which they lay or crouched or roamed, great flakes of flame fell slowly as snow falls in the Alps on a windless day. Like those Alexander met in the hot regions of India, flames raining from the sky to fall still extinguished on his legions, whereat he formed his ranks and at their head set the example, trampling the hot ground for fear the tongues of fire might join and spread. Just so in hell descended the long rain upon the damned, kindling the sand like tinder under a flint and steel, doubling the pain. In a never-ending fit upon those sands, the arms of the damned twitched all about their bodies, now here, now there, brushing away the brands. Poet, I said, master of every dread we have encountered, other than those fiends who sallied from the last gate of the dead. Who is that wraith that lies along the rim and sets his face against the fire in scorn, so that the rain seems not to mellow him? And he himself, hearing what I had said to my guide and Lord concerning him, replied, what I was living, the same am I now dead. Though Jupiter wear out his sooty smith, from whom on my last day he snatched in anger and the jagged thunderbolt he pierced me with. Though he wear out the others one by one who labor at the forge at Mongebello, crying again, help, help, help me, good Vulcan, as he did at Phlegra, and hurled down endlessly with all the power of heaven in his arms, small satisfaction would he win from me. At this my guide spoke with such vehemence as I had not heard from him in all of hell. O Copanius, by your insolence, you are made to suffer as much fire inside as falls upon you. Only your own rage could be fit torment for your sullen pride. Then he turned to me more gently. That, he said, was one of the 7 who laid siege to Thebes. Living, he scorned God, and among the dead he scorns him yet. He thinks he may detest God's power too easily, but as I told him, his slobber is a fit badge for his breast. Now follow me, and mind for your own good, you do not step upon the burning sand, but keep well back along the edge of the wood. We walked in silence then till we reached a rill that gushes from the wood. It ran so red the memory sends a shudder through me still. As from the Bolicame springs the stream, the sinful women keep to their own use, so down the sand the rill flowed out in steam. The bed and both its banks were petrified, as were its margins. Thus I knew at once our passage through the sand lay by its side. Among all other wonders I have shown you, since we came through the gate denied to none, nothing your eyes have seen is equal to the marvel of the rill by which we stand, for it stifles all the flames above its course as it flows out across the burning sand. So spoke my guide across the flickering light, and I begged him to bestow on me the food for which he had given me the appetite. In the middle of the sea and gone to waste, there lies a country known as Crete. He said, under whose king the ancient world was chaste. Once Rhea chose it as the secret crypt and cradle of her son, and better to hide him, her Corybantes raised a din when he wept. An ancient giant stands in the mountain's core. He keeps his shoulder turned toward Damietta and looks toward Rome as if it were his mirror. His head is made of gold of silver work, his breast and both his arms of polished brass, the rest of his great torso to the fork. He is of chosen iron from there down, except that his right foot is terracotta. It is this foot he rests more weight upon. Every part except the gold is split by a great fissure from which endless tears drip down and hollow out the mountain's pit. Their course sinks to this pit from stone to stone, becoming Acheron, Phlegethon, and Styx. Then by this narrow sluice they hurtle down to the end of all descent and disappear into Cocytus. You shall see what sink that is with your own eyes. I pass it in silence here, and I to him. But if these waters flow from the world above, why is this rill met only along this shelf? And he to me, you know the place is round, and though you have come deep into the valley through the many circles, always bearing left along the steep, you have not traveled any circle through its total round. Hence, when new things appear from time to time, that hardly should surprise you. And I, where shall we find Phlegethon's course and Leth's? One you omit, and of the other you only say the Ter flood is its source. In all you ask of me, you please me truly, he answered. But the red and boiling water should answer the first question you put to me. And you shall stand by Leth, but far hence there, where the spirits go to wash themselves, when their guilt has been removed by penitence. And then he said, now it is time to quit this edge of shade. Follow close after me along the rill, and do not stray from it, for the unburning margins form a lane, and by them we may cross the burning plain. Canto 15. We go by one of the stone margins now, and the steam of the rivulet makes a shade above it, guarding the stream and banks from the flaming snow. As the Flemings in the lowland between Bruges and Wissant, under constant threat of the sea, erect their great dikes to hold back the deluge, as the Padawans along the shores of the Brent build levees to protect their towns and castles, lest Chariantana drown in the spring torrent. To the same plan, though not so wide nor high, did the engineer, whoever he may have been, design the margin we were crossing by. Already we were so far from the wood that even had I turned to look at it, I could not have made it out from where I stood. When a company of shades came into sight, walking beside the bank, they stared at us as men at evening by the new moon's light stare at one another when they pass by on a dark road, pointing their eyebrows toward us as an old tailor squints at his needle's eye. Stared at so closely by that ghostly crew, I was recognized by one who seized the hem of my skirt and said, "Wonder of wonders, you." And I, when he stretched out his arm to me, searched his baked features closely, till at last I traced his image from my memory in spite of the burnt crust. And bending near to put my face closer to his, at last I answered, "Sir Brunetto, are you here?" "Oh, my son, may it not displease you," he cried, "if Brunetto Latino leave his company and turn and walk a little by your side." And I to him, "With all my soul I ask it, or let us sit together if it please him who is my guide and leads me through this pit." "My son," he said, "whoever of this train pauses a moment must lie 100 years, forbidden to brush off the burning rain. Therefore go on, I will walk at your hem, and then rejoin my company, which goes mourning eternal loss in eternal flame." I did not dare descend to his own level, but kept my head inclined as one who walks in reverence, meditating good and evil. "What brings you here before your own last day? What fortune or what destiny?" he began. "And who is he that leads you this dark way?" Up there in the happy life, I went astray in a valley, I replied, before I had reached the fullness of my years. Only yesterday at dawn I turned from it. This spirit showed himself to me as I was turning back and guides me home again along this road. And he, follow your star, for if in all of the sweet life I saw one truth shine clearly, you cannot miss your glorious arrival. And had I lived to do what I meant to do, I would have cheered and seconded your work, observing heaven so well disposed toward you. But that ungrateful and malignant stock that came down from Fiesole of old and still smacks the mountain and the rock, for your good works will be your enemy, and there is cause. The sweet fig is not meant to bear its fruit beside the bitter sorb tree. Even the old adage calls them blind. An envious, proud, and avaricious people see that you root their customs from your mind. It is written in your stars and will come to pass that your honors shall make both sides hunger for you, but the goat shall never reach to crop that grass. Let the beasts of Fiesole devour their get like sows, but never let them touch the plant, if among their rankness any springs up yet, in which is born again the holy seed of the Romans, who remained among their rabble when Florence made a new nest for their greed. Ah, had I all my wish, I answered then, you would not yet be banished from the world in which you were a radiance among men. For that sweet image, gentle and paternal, you were to me in the world, when hour by hour you taught me how man makes himself eternal, lives in my mind and now strikes to my heart, and while I live, the gratitude I owe it will speak to men out of my life and art. What you have told me of my course I write by another text. I save to show a lady who will judge these matters if I reach her height. This much I would have you know, so long I say, as nothing in my conscience troubles me, I am prepared for fortune, come what may. Twice already in the eternal shade I have heard this prophecy, but let fortune turn her wheel as she please, and the countryman his spade. My guiding spirit paused at my last word, and turning right about stood eye to say to me, well heeded is well heard. But I did not reply to him, going on with Sir Brunetto to ask him who was with him in the hot sands, the best born and best known, and he to me, of some who share this walk it is good to know. Of the rest, let us say nothing, for the time would be too short for so much talk. In brief, we all were clerks and men of worth, great men of letters, scholars of renown, all by the one same crime defiled on earth. Priscian moves there along the wearisome way, and Francesco da Corso. And also there, if you had any longing for such scum, you might have seen that the servant of servants sent from the Arno to the Bacchiglione, where he left his unnatural organ wrapped in cerements. I would say more, but there across the sand a new smoke rises, and new people come, and I must run to be with my own band. Remember my treasure in which I shall live on. I ask no more. He turned, then he seemed across that plain like one of those who run for the green cloth at Verona, and of those more like the one who wins than those who lose. Canto 16. We could already hear the rumbling drive of the waterfall in its plunge to the next circle, a murmur like the throbbing of a hive, when three shades turned together on the plain, breaking toward us from a company that went its way to torture in that rain. They cried with one voice as they ran toward me. Wait, oh wait, for by your dress you seem a voyager from our own tainted country. Ah, what wounds I saw, some new, some old, branded upon their bodies. Even now the pain of it in memory turns me cold. My teacher heard their cries and turning to, stood face to face. Do as they ask, he said, for these souls to whom respect is due, and were it not for the darting flames that hem our narrow passage in, I should have said it were more fitting you ran after them. We paused, and they began their ancient wail over again. And when they stood below us, they formed themselves into a moving wheel, as naked and anointed champions do, in feeling out their grasp and their advantage before they close in for the thrust or blow. So circling, each one stared up at my height, and as their feet moved left around the circle, their necks kept turning backward toward the right. If the misery of this place and our unkempt and scorched appearance, one of them began, bring us and what we pray into contempt, still may our earthly fame move to tell who and what you are, who so securely set your live feet to the dead dust of hell. This peeled and naked soul who runs before me around this wheel was higher than you think there in the world. In honor and degree, Guido Guerra was the name he bore, the good Guadrada's grandson. In his life he won great fame in council and in war. The other, who behind me treads this sand, was Teghiayo Aldobrandi, whose good counsels the world would have done well to understand. And I, who share their torment in my life, was Jacopo Rusticucci. Above all, I owe my sorrows to a savage wife. I would have thrown myself to the plain below had I been sheltered from the falling fire, and I think my teacher would have let me go. But seeing I should be burned and cooked, my fear overcame the first impulse of my heart to leap down and embrace them then and there. Not contempt, I said, but the compassion that seizes on my soul and memory at the thought of you tormented in this fashion. It was grief that choked my speech when, through the scorching air of this pit, my Lord announced to me that such men as you are might be approaching. I am of your own land, and I have always heard with affection and rehearsed horror and rehearsed honor your name and the good deeds of your happier days. Led by my guide and his truth, I leave the gall and go for the sweet apples of delight. But first I must descend to the center of it all. So may your soul and body long continue together on the way you go, he answered, and the honor of your days shine after you. Tell me if courtesy and valor raise their banners in our city as of old, or has the glory faded from its days? For Borzier, who is newly come among us, and yonder goes with our companions in pain, taunts us with such reports, and his words have stung us. O Florence, your sudden wealth and your upstart rabble, dissolute and overweening, already set you weeping in your heart. I cried with face upraised, and on the sand those three sad spirits looked at one another like men who hear the truth and understand. If this be your manner of speaking, and if you can satisfy others with such ease and grace, they said as one, we hail a happy man. Therefore, if you win through this gloomy pass and climb again to see the heaven of stars, when it rejoices you to say I was, speak of us to the living. They parted then, breaking their turning wheel, and as they vanished over the plain, their legs seemed wings. Amen could not have been pronounced between their start and their disappearance over the rim of sand, and then it pleased my master to depart. A little way beyond, we felt the quiver and roar of the cascade, so close that speech would have been drowned in thunder, as that river, the first one on the left of the Apennines, to have a path of its own from Monteveso to the Adriatic Sea, which, as it twines, is called the Aquascetta from its source until it nears Forli, and then is known as the Montone, and its further course resounds from the mountain in a single leap there above San Benedetto del Alpe, where 1,000 falls might fit into the steep. So down from a sheer bank, in one enormous plunge, the tainted water roared so loud a little longer there would have deafened us. I had a cord bound around me like a belt, which I had once thought I might put to use to snare the leopard with the gaudy pelt. When at my guide's command I had unbound its loops from about my habit, I gathered it and held it out to him all coiled and wound. He bent far back to his right, and throwing it out from the edge, sent it in a long arc into the bottomless darkness of the pit. Now surely some unusual event, I said to myself, must follow this new signal upon which my good guide is so intent. Ah, how cautiously a man should breathe near those who see not only what we do, but have the sense which reads the mind beneath. He said to me, "You will soon see arise what I await, and what you wonder at, soon you will see the thing before your eyes. To the truth, which will seem falsehood, every man who would not be called a liar while speaking fact should learn to seal his lips as best he can. But here I cannot be still, reader, I swear by the lines of my comedy, so may it live, that I saw swimming up through that foul air a shape to astonish the most doughty soul, a shape like one returning through the sea from working loose an anchor run afoul of something on the bottom, so it rose, its arms spread upward and its feet drawn close." Canto 17. Now see the sharp-tailed beast that mounts the brink. He passes mountains, breaks through walls and weapons. Behold the beast that makes the whole world stink. These were the words my master spoke to me, then signaled the weird beast to come to ground close to the sheer end of our rocky levee. The filthy prototype of fraud drew near and settled his head and breast upon the edge of the dark cliff, but let his tail hang clear. His face was innocent of every guile, benign and just in feature and expression, and under its body was half reptile. His two great paws were hairy to the armpits, all his back and breast, and both his flanks were figured with bright knots and subtle circlets. Never was such a tapestry of bloom woven on earth by Tartar or by Turk, nor by Arachne at her flowing loom. As a fairy sometimes lies along the strand, part beached and part afloat, and as the beaver up yonder in the guzzling German's land squats halfway up the bank when a fight is on, just so lay that most ravenous of beasts on the rim which bounds the burning sand with stone. His tail twitched in the void beyond that lip, thrashing and twisting up the envenomed fork which, like a scorpion stinger, armed the tip. My guide said, "It is time now we drew near that monster," and descending on the right, we moved 10 paces outward to be clear of sand and flames. And when we were beside him, I saw upon the sand a bit beyond us Some people crouching close beside the brim. The master paused. That you may take with you the full experience of this round, he said. Go now and see the last state of that crew. But let your talk be brief, and I will stay and reason with this beast till you return, that his strong back may serve us on our way. So further yet along the outer edge of the seventh circle, I moved on alone and came to the sad people of the ledge. Their eyes burst with their grief, their smoking hands jerked about their bodies, warding off now the flames and now the burning sands. Dogs in summer bit by fleas and gadflies, jerking their snouts about, twitching their paws now here, now there, behave no otherwise. I examined several faces there among that sooty throng, and I saw none I knew, but I observed from each neck there hung an enormous purse, each marked with its own beast and its own colors like a coat of arms. On these their streaming eyes appeared to feast. Looking about, I saw one purse display azure on or a kind of lion, or another on a blood-red field, a goose whiter than whey, and one that bore a huge and swollen sow, azure on field argent, said to me, what are you doing in this pit of sorrow? Leave us alone, and since you have not yet died, I'll have you know my neighbor Vitaliano has a place reserved for him here at my side. A Padawan among Florentines, I sit here, while hour by hour they nearly deafen me, shouting, send us the sovereign cavalier with the purse of the three goats. He half arose, twisted his mouth, and darted out his tongue for all the world like an ox licking its nose. And I, afraid that any longer stay would anger him who had warned me to be brief, left those exhausted souls without delay. Returned, I found my guide already mounted upon the rump of that monstrosity. He said to me, now must you be undaunted. This beast must be our stairway to the pit. Mount it in front, and I will ride between you and the tail, lest you be poisoned by it. Like one so close to the quaternary chill that his nails are already pale and his flesh trembles at the very sight of shade or a cool rill, so did I tremble at each frightful word. But his scolding filled me with that shame that makes the servant brave in the presence of his lord. I mounted the great shoulders of that freak and tried to say, now help me to hold on. But my voice clicked in my throat and I could not speak. But no sooner had I settled where he placed me than he, my stay, my comfort, my courage, in other perils gathered and embraced me. Then he called out, now, Geryon, we are ready. Bear well in mind that his living weight, and make your circles wide and your flight steady. As a small ship slides from a beaching or its pier backward, so that monster slipped back from the rim. And when he had drawn clear, he swung about, and stretching out his tail, he worked it like an eel. And with his paws he gathered in the air, while I turned pale. I think there was no greater fear the day Phaethon let loose the reins and burned the sky along the great scar of the Milky Way. Nor when Icarus, too close to the sun's track, felt the wax melt, unfeathering his loins, and heard his father cry, turn back, turn back. Then I felt when I found myself in air afloat in space with nothing visible but the enormous beast that bore me there. Slowly, slowly he swims on through space, wheels and descends, but I can sense it only by the way the wind blows upward past my face. Already on the right I heard the swell and thunder of the whirlpool. Looking down, I leaned my head out and stared into hell. I trembled again at the prospect of dismounting and cowered in on myself. For I saw fires on every hand, and I heard a long lamenting. And then I saw, till then I had but felt it, the course of our down spiral to the horrors that rose to us from all sides of the pit, as a flight-worn falcon sinks down wearily through neither bird nor lure has though neither bird nor lure has signaled it, the falconer crying out, "What, spent already?" Then turns and in 100 spinning gyres sulks from her master's call, sullen and proud, so to that bottom lit by endless fires. The monster Geryon circled and fell, setting us down at the foot of the precipice of ragged rock on the 8th shelf of hell. And one freed from our weight, he shot from there into the dark, like an arrow into the air. Canto 18. There is in hell a vast and sloping ground called Maelbog, a lost place of stone as black as the great cliff that seals it round. Precisely in the center of that space there yawns a well extremely wide and deep. I shall discuss it in its proper place. The border that remains between the well pit and the great cliff forms an enormous circle, and 10 descending troughs are cut in it, offering a general prospect like the ground that lies around one of those ancient castles whose walls are girded many times around by concentric moats. And just as from the portal the castle's bridges run from moat to the last bank, so from the great rock wall across the embankments and the ditches, high and narrow cliffs run to the central well, which cuts and gathers them like radii. Here, shaken from the back of Geryon, we found ourselves. My guide kept to the left and I walked after him, so we moved on. Below on my right, and filling the first ditch along both banks, new souls in pain appeared, new torments and new devils black as pitch. All of these sinners were naked. On our side of the middle, they walked toward us, on the other in our direction, but with swifter stride. Just so the Romans, because of the great throng, in the year of the Jubilee, divide the bridge in order that the crowds may pass along, so that all the face the castle as they go, on one side toward St. Peter's, while on the other all move along facing toward Mount Giordano. And everywhere along that hideous track I saw horned demons with enormous lashes move through those souls, scourging them on the back. Ah, how the stragglers of that long route stirred their legs' quick march at the first crack of the lash. Certainly no one waited a second or a third. As we went on, one face in that procession caught my eye, and I said, "That sinner there, it is certainly not the first time I've seen that one." I stopped, therefore, to study him, and my guide, out of his kindness, waited, and even allowed me to walk back a few steps at the sinner's side. And that flayed spirit, seeing me turn around, thought to hide his face, but I called to him, "You there that walk along with your eyes on the ground, if those are not false features, then I know you as Venedico Caccianemico of Bologna. What brings you here among this pretty crew?" And he replied, "I speak unwillingly, but something in your living voice, in which I hear the world again, stirs and compels me. It was I who, brought the fair Gisola round to serve the will and lust of the Marquis. However sordid that old tale may sound, there are many more from Bologna who weep away eternity in this ditch. We fill it so there are not as many tongues that are taught to say Sippa in all the land that lies between the Reno and the Saveno, as you must know from the many tales of our avarice and spleen. And as he spoke, one of those lashes fell across his back, and a demon cried, "Move on, you pimp, there are no women to sell here to sell." Turning away then, I rejoined my guide. We came in a few steps to a raised ridge that made a passage to the other side. This we climbed easily and turned right. Along the jagged crest we left behind the eternal circling of those souls in flight. And when we reached the part at which the stone was tunneled for the passage of the scourged, my guide said, "Stop a minute and look down on these other misbegotten wraiths of sin. You have not seen their faces, for they moved in the same direction we were headed in." So from that bridge we looked down on the throng that hurried toward us on the other side. Here too the whiplash hurried them along, and the good master, studying that train, said, "Look there at that great soul that approaches and seems to shed no tears for all his pain. What kingliness moves with him even in hell? It is Jason, who by courage and good advice made off with the Colchian ram. Later it fell that he passed Lemnos, where the women of wrath, enraged by Venus' curse that drove their lovers out of their arms, put all their males to death. There, with his honeyed tongue and his dishonest lover's wiles, he gulled Hypsipyle, who in the slaughter had gulled all the rest. And there he left her pregnant and forsaken. Such guilt condemns him to such punishment. And also for Medea is vengeance taken. All seducers march here to the whip. And let us say no more about this valley and those it closes in its stony grip. We had already come to where the walk crosses the second bank, from which it lifts another arch, spanning from rock to rock. Here we heard people whine in the next chasm, and knock and thump themselves with open palms and blubber through their snouts as if in a spasm. Steaming from that pit a vapor rose over the banks, crusting them with a slime that sickened my eyes and hammered at my nose. That chasm sinks so deep we could not sight its bottom anywhere until we climbed along the rock arch to its greatest height. Once there I peered down and I saw long lines of people in a river of excrement that seemed the overflow of the world's latrines. I saw among the felons of that pit one wraith who might or might not have been tonsured. One could not tell, he was so smeared with shit. He bellowed, "You there, why do you stare at me more than at all the others in this stew?" And I to him, "Because if memory serves me, I knew you when your hair was dry. You are Alessio." Enter Minelli da Luca. "That's why I pick you from this filthy fry." And he then, beating himself on his clown's head, "Down to this have the flatteries I sold the living sunk me here among the dead." And my guide prompted me then, "Lean forward a bit, and look beyond him. There, do you see that one scratching herself with dungy nails, the strumpet who fidgets to her feet, then to a crouch? It is the whore Thais who told her lover when he sent to ask her, "Do you thank me much?" Much? Nay, past all believing, and with this let us turn from the sight of this abyss.